60 chairs in the sanctuary of Grace Lutheran Church. White ribbons on the pews. Organ playing Pachelbel. I stood at the back in a dress I'd saved 4 months to buy, bouquet trembling in my hands, and stared at the front row. 2 chairs. Reserved. Parents of the bride. Both empty. The organist looked over her shoulder at me. Pastor Greer checked his watch. Loretta Barrett, my soon-to-be mother-in-law, squeezed my arm. "I'll walk you," she said. And she did. After the ceremony, after the cake Loretta brought from her own kitchen, after 58 people hugged me and Wade and told us congratulations, I sat in the church parking lot and called my mother. "Mom, where were you?" A pause. Then Connie Wells, 59 years old, said the words I will carry to my grave. We couldn't miss her party. Shelby's birthday party. Cake and streamers at my sister's trailer 5 minutes from the house I'd been paying the mortgage on for 6 years. But what happened 6 months later? What 200 people in a VFW hall would hear? What a loan document I was never supposed to find would reveal? None of them saw that coming. Welcome back to Hidden Family Revenge. I'm Autumn, 31, a bookkeeper in a small town in Darke County, Ohio. I spent 6 years quietly paying my parents' mortgage while my sister got the credit. This is the story of what happened when they chose her birthday cake over my wedding, and what 200 people had to say about it. If you've ever paid the bills while someone else got the credit, drop a comment and subscribe. I should back up. My name is Autumn Wells, and I've been a bookkeeper at Henderson & Associates CPA for 9 years. Started as a summer intern when I was 22, answering phones and filing paper returns in manila folders that smelled like dust and coffee. Ed Henderson, 64, bifocals, mustard stain on every third tie, sat me down my first week and said, "Autumn, if you find 1 cent out of place, you don't go home until you find where it went." I took that literally. 9 years later, I handled the books for 40 small businesses across the county. Feed stores, auto shops, 2 churches, and a funeral home. I knew who was profitable, who was faking it, and who was 1 bad quarter from closing. Numbers don't lie. I liked that about them. My house was a 2-bedroom place on Elm Road, 25 minutes from my parents. I'd saved for 7 years to buy it. Direct deposit into a separate account every payday, no exceptions. White siding, small yard, a porch swing. Wade installed the weekend after our 3rd date. Wade Barrett, 33, general contractor. Ran his own outfit, Barrett Construction. Just him and 2 guys he'd known since high school. He built decks and poured foundations and came home smelling like sawdust and diesel. We'd been together 4 years. He proposed on that porch swing with a ring he'd hammered from a piece of salvaged copper pipe. Didn't get on one knee. Just held the ring out and said, "I built it. If you want it." I wanted it. Ed told me once that you can tell everything about a person from their books. Wade's books were clean. No debt. No games. Every dollar accounted for. That's the kind of man I married. My father, Roger, is 61. He worked at Mercer Automotive for 30 years, the parts plant on State Route 118 that employed half the county. Started at 20, stamping brake rotors, and stayed because that's what Wells men do. His father, Gerald, did 40 years at the same plant. Roger planned to match him. At 50, a disc in his lower back, L4 to L5, the doctor wrote on a chart I wasn't supposed to see, gave out during a double shift. 3 weeks in the hospital. 6 months of physical therapy, then permanent disability. Roger Wells, who'd never missed a day in 3 decades, was done. My mother, Connie, is 59. She works part-time at the Dollar General on Route 36, scanning coupons and restocking shelves. She lost her own mother in a car accident on State Route 49 when she was 16. Never got a goodbye. That loss carved a hole in Connie that she's spent 43 years trying to fill with proximity. If you're close, she loves you. If you're far, you've abandoned her. My sister Shelby is 26, hairstylist at Glamour Cuts, married to Derek Marsh, 28, who stocks feed at Tractor Supply. They live in a trailer park 5 minutes from our parents' house with their daughter Paisley, who just turned 4. Shelby visited my parents every single day, brought Paisley, made coffee in Mom's kitchen, sat on Mom's couch. And every time I called or stopped by on a weekend, Connie had the same refrain. Shelby was here. Shelby was here this morning. Shelby was here with Paisley. Shelby brought pie. I could write a check for $800 a month and still lose to a blueberry pie. That's the math of my family. To explain my father, I have to explain what work meant to a Wells man. Gerald Wells drove a truck. Roger stamped parts. A Wells man fed his family with his hands, and that was law. No exceptions, no complaints. You punched in, you punched out, you put food on the table. Roger did that for 30 years. Then his back broke, and the law broke with it. He came home from the hospital in a brace that wrapped his torso like a corset. Couldn't bend, couldn't lift, couldn't stand at the press for 8 hours. The disability check covered groceries and utilities, but not the mortgage, not the insurance, not the property taxes. I was 25, fresh into my full-time position at Henderson, when Roger called me one Tuesday evening. He didn't ask how I was. He said, I need you to set up an auto-pay from your account to the bank. For the mortgage, $800 a month. Then, don't tell your mother. I could have asked why. I could have said no. Instead, I logged into my bank account that night and set it up. Direct payment to Dark County Savings Bank, $800, first of every month, account number ending in 4417. I added the insurance premium 3 months later, $340, when Roger mentioned his coverage was lapsing. Then the property tax installment, $180 quarterly. He never said thank you. Not once in 6 years. What he did say, the one time I visited while Wade was helping me carry in groceries, was this. He watched Wade haul a case of water onto the counter, biceps straining under his work shirt, and Roger's jaw went tight. He was looking at a contractor, a man who built things with his hands, a younger, stronger version of everything Roger used to be. Connie's mother, my grandmother Ruth, died on a Thursday afternoon in November 1982. State Route 49, westbound. A delivery truck crossed the center line. Connie was 16 and sitting in algebra class when the principal walked in and pulled her into the hallway. She didn't get to say goodbye. She didn't get to say anything. One morning her mother was pouring cereal, and by the afternoon she was a name on a headstone at Green Lawn Cemetery. Connie married Roger at 19, had me at 22, had Shelby at 33. And somewhere between the first daughter and the second, she built a system for measuring love that had nothing to do with sacrifice or money or showing up when things were hard. Her system was simple. Who's here right now? Shelby was always right there. 5 minutes down the road, through the door by 9 a.m. every morning, Paisley on her hip, coffee brewing. Shelby never missed a Sunday dinner. Shelby painted Mom's toenails on the back porch in summer. Shelby was present. And in Connie's math, present was everything. When I bought my own house 25 minutes away, Connie didn't say congratulations. She said, that's pretty far. When I started dating Wade, she didn't ask about him for 3 months. When I finally brought him to dinner, she spent the evening talking to Shelby about Paisley's preschool. I don't think my mother disliked me. I think she was terrified of me. Every mile I put between us, every step toward independence, every sign that I was building a life that didn't orbit her kitchen table. Connie read it as leaving, and in her mind, leaving was what happened on State Route 49 on a Thursday in November. People leave. They don't come back. Wade and I planned a simple wedding. Grace Lutheran Church, 60 guests, reception at the VFW Hall afterward. Total budget, $4,200. We paid every cent ourselves. No registry. No bridesmaids in matching dresses, just good food, a borrowed sound system, and the people we cared about. I called my parents in August to confirm the date, October 12th, a Saturday. Connie said, we'll be there, honey. Roger nodded. I could hear the couch creak, but he didn't speak. I took Mom's words at face value because that's what daughters do. Shelby knew the date. She'd known it since June, when I sent the save the dates I'd printed at the office on cardstock Ed donated from the supply closet. But on September 15th, she posted on Facebook, "My 26th birthday bash, October 12th. All-day party at our place. Barbecue, cake, and karaoke." I called her. "Shelby, that's my wedding day." "I know, but it's my birthday. I have it every year." "Can you do your party in the evening? The ceremony's at 11. You could come to the wedding and have your party after." "It's my birthday, Autumn. Why should I adjust my plans for yours?" I tried once more. "Shelby, I'm only getting married once. And I only turned 26 once." That was the end of the conversation. I waited for my parents to weigh in. I waited for Connie to call Shelby and say, "Move the party, it's your sister's wedding." I waited for Roger to pick up the phone and tell his youngest that a wedding outranks a birthday barbecue. The call never came. The silence from my parents' house was louder than anything Shelby could have said. October 12th, 8 a.m., I put on the dress in the bathroom of the church fellowship hall. White cotton, T-length, nothing fancy. I'd bought it at a consignment shop in Greenville for $62. It fit perfectly. Loretta Barrett zipped me up and tucked a sprig of lavender into my hair. "You look like a bride," she said. I looked like a woman about to walk into a room where 2 chairs in the front row would be empty. 11 a.m. The organ started. 58 people sat in the pews. Wade stood at the altar in a blue suit he'd borrowed from his best friend. Pastor Greer opened his Bible, and Loretta Barrett, a 62-year-old widow who'd buried her husband 3 years ago and raised her son alone, took my arm and walked me down the aisle. "You deserve this walk, sweetheart," she whispered. She said it like it was obvious, like any mother would do it. The ceremony was beautiful. Wade's hands were steady when he held mine. His voice cracked once, on the word always, and the congregation laughed softly. We kissed. We were married. But I looked at those chairs. I looked at them during the vows, during the prayer, during the recessional. 2 empty seats with white ribbons tied to the backs. After the ceremony, I sat in the parking lot in the passenger seat of Wade's truck and called Connie. "Mom, where are you?" I heard party noise behind her. Music. Paisley laughing. "Oh, honey, it's Shelby's birthday. We couldn't miss her party. Shelby's got cake and everything." Roger took the phone, his voice flat, like he was reading a line from a card. "You don't need us. You've got Wade now." I set the phone on the dashboard. Wade looked at me. "They chose cake," I said. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table in my bathrobe with a cup of coffee that had gone cold and my phone open to the banking app. Wade was in the shower. The house smelled like the leftover reception cake Loretta had wrapped in foil and left on our counter. I tapped into the autopay settings. 3 recurring payments. I'd set them up 6 years ago on a Tuesday night after Roger called. Mortgage, Dark County Savings Bank, $800. First of every month. I pressed cancel. Health insurance, Roger Wells, $340. First of every month. Cancel. Property tax installment, Dark County Treasurer, $180. Every quarter. Cancel. 3 taps. 6 seconds. $1,320 a month. More than 15% of my take-home pay. Gone from my budget for 6 years. The real total, mortgage, insurance, property taxes, came to over $80,000 since I started. I am a bookkeeper. I know exactly what I gave. I closed the app, set the phone down, picked up my coffee. Wade came out of the bathroom, towel around his waist, water dripping on the hardwood he'd installed himself. He saw my face and didn't ask what happened. He asked what I did. Canceled the payments. He pulled a chair out, sat down, and set it flat. About time. I waited to feel guilty. I waited for the familiar clench in my stomach, the one I got every time I thought about Roger's back brace, or Connie's worried eyes, or the bank notice that would land in their mailbox in 30 days. The guilt didn't come. What came instead was the strangest lightness, like I'd put down a bag of gravel I'd been carrying so long I'd forgotten it wasn't part of my body. 3 weeks after the wedding, Roger called. It was a Tuesday. I was reconciling quarterly statements for a feed store client when his name lit up my phone. I let it ring twice. Autumn. The bank called about the mortgage. Something wrong with the payment. His tone was casual. Confused, maybe, like a man who'd found a parking ticket on someone else's car. I stopped paying it, Dad. Silence. Not the comfortable kind. The kind where you can hear someone's breathing change. What do you mean you stopped? I mean I stopped. The autopay, the mortgage, the insurance, the property taxes, all of it. You can't just... That's our house. It's your house, Dad. It's always been your house. I was just the one paying for it. More silence. Then his voice shifted. Lower, rougher, with a crack running through it like water under ice. You don't need us. You've got Wade now. The same words. The exact same sentence he'd spoken on the phone while I sat in my wedding dress in a church parking lot. But this time the words weren't a dismissal. They were a rope he was throwing, hoping I'd catch it and pull him back to the shore where his daughter still paid his bills and he never had to say the word thank you. I didn't catch it. That's what you said on my wedding day, Dad, right before you hung up to go eat birthday cake. He didn't respond. I heard Connie's voice in the background. Roger, who's on the phone? And then the line went dead. I put my phone face down on the desk and went back to the feed store's third quarter numbers. Debits, credits, everything in balance. The feed store's books, at least. Shelby went to work. Not at the salon, at building a story. Within 2 weeks, she'd told half the county that I'd abandoned my parents. I heard it at the gas station from Linda Crowell, who ran the Curves Gym on Main Street. Shelby says you're not even talking to your folks. That true? I heard it at the post office from Mary Beth Hendricks. Your mom is so hurt, Autumn. Shelby says you just cut them off after the wedding. I heard it at Rite Aid when Doug the pharmacist pulled me aside near the blood pressure monitor display. Is everything okay with your folks? Shelby was in here yesterday saying you're not speaking to them. Doug had been filling Roger's gabapentin prescription for 3 years. He knew who picked it up every month. He knew who paid the difference when the copay changed. He was looking at me with the expression of a man holding a puzzle piece that didn't fit the picture Shelby was painting. I appreciate you asking, Doug, I said. That's all I said. I didn't correct the record. I didn't explain. A bookkeeper learns early that the numbers will speak for themselves. You just have to wait until someone reads the ledger. Shelby texted me that Friday night. You're the one who abandoned us. Don't pretend like you're the victim here. I read it once. I set the phone on the nightstand. Wade glanced over from his side of the bed. Shelby? Shelby. You gonna answer? No. He turned off the lamp. In the dark, I listened to the house settle, the furnace kicking on, the refrigerator humming. Sounds a house makes when someone is actually there, paying the electric bill, keeping the lights on. My parents' house would be making different sounds soon. November. The first mortgage payment missed. Dark County Savings Bank sent a notice. White envelope, red type, the kind that doesn't get mistaken for a credit card offer. Roger didn't tell Connie. He shoved the envelope into the glove box of his truck and drove to the Dollar General parking lot to sit and stare at the dashboard. I know this because Hank Pryor, the 68-year-old man who'd lived next door to my parents for 30 years, saw Roger sitting in his truck for 45 minutes and later mentioned it to me when he came in to get his taxes done. The insurance lapsed next. Roger's gabapentin, the nerve pain medication that kept his back functional enough to get out of bed, went from a $15 copay to $180 at full retail. Doug told me later that Roger stood at the pharmacy counter, stared at the number on the register screen, and walked out without the prescription. Property taxes went delinquent. The county sent a notice, then a second notice. Connie found that one in the mail before Roger could intercept it. She called me on a Wednesday evening. Daddy says there's a problem with the house. Something about taxes. Do you know anything about it? She still didn't know I'd been paying. 6 years, and Roger's pride had held the secret like a fist around a nail. You should ask Dad, Mom. He says he's handling it. Then I guess he's handling it. She paused. I could hear the Dollar General break room behind her. Someone microwaving something. The beep of the timer. Autumn, are you still upset about the wedding? I closed my eyes. I'm not upset, Mom. I'm done. She didn't ask what I meant by done. Maybe she was afraid to. With $1,320 a month back in my pocket, my life started looking different. Not dramatically. I didn't buy a sports car or take a cruise. I'm a bookkeeper. Dramatic isn't in my vocabulary. Wade and I refinished the spare bedroom. New drywall, fresh paint, hardwood floors from a salvage yard in Troy. He did the labor. I did the math. Total cost, $1,400, which was less than what I used to spend on my parents in a single month. We replaced the kitchen faucet that had been dripping since we moved in. We put new tires on my car. Small things. Normal things. Things I couldn't afford when 15% of my income was going to a house I didn't live in for people who didn't come to my wedding. In December, Ed Henderson called me into his office. He closed the door, which he only did for two things: firing someone or offering a promotion. Since it was just him and me in the firm, firing wasn't likely. I'm retiring in 18 months, he said. I want you to buy the practice. He slid a folder across the desk. Appraised value, client list, projected revenue, SBA loan terms. I opened it. The numbers were reasonable. More than reasonable. Ed was giving me a discount because he'd rather see the business continue than sell to some firm in Dayton. Think about it, he said. I didn't need to think about it. I'd been running that office for 3 years while Ed played golf on Fridays. But I told him I'd think about it anyway, because that's the kind of thing bookkeepers say. That same week, Loretta Barrett sat me down at her kitchen table over chess pie and said, "You two never had a proper reception. Let me throw one. Spring, VFW Hall, the whole town." Wade said yes before I finished chewing. Autumn paid $1,320 every month for 6 years, and in return, her parents chose birthday cake over her wedding. Now the bank notices are piling up. But the worst part hasn't hit yet, because Autumn hasn't found that loan document. If you know what it's like to carry someone else's weight and get nothing back, stay with me. January. I was at the county recorder's office doing a title search for a client. Mrs. Miller wanted to sell her 10 acres on Township Line Road, and Ed needed a clean chain of title before we could close. I sat at the public terminal, scrolling through property records, when I realized the system let you search any address in the county. Professional curiosity. That's what I called it. I typed in my parents' address, 8847 County Road 12. The mortgage record came up first. Original loan, 1998, Darke County Savings Bank. That was the one I'd been paying. Normal. But underneath it was a second line. HELOC. Home equity line of credit. Opened 8 months ago. $25,000. I read it twice. Then I read the co-signers. Roger Wells, Derek Marsh, my father and my brother-in-law. 8 months ago. That was February. 2 months before I sent the save the dates. 4 months before Shelby posted her birthday party on the same day as my wedding. I printed the record, folded it in thirds, put it in my purse, walked to the parking lot, sat in my car in front of the county building with the engine off and the heater dying. A home equity line of credit means you borrow against the value you've built in your house. Equity. The word itself comes from fair, from equal. There was nothing equal about this. Roger had used the house I'd been paying the mortgage on for 6 years, as collateral. He'd pledged my payments, my money, my 6 years of silence, so that Derek Marsh could co-sign a loan. And I was never supposed to know. I called Carol Fenton at the bank. Carol was 52, had processed loans at Darke County Savings for 20 years, and bowled on the same Thursday night league as Loretta Barrett. She knew everyone's business and kept it in a vault, which is the only kind of banker you want in a small town. Carol, I'm looking at a HELOC filed on my parents' property. Can you confirm the co-signers? She paused. I could hear her keyboard. Roger Wells and Derek Marsh. Opened February of last year. What was the stated purpose? Another pause. Vehicle purchase and business equipment. Derek's Ford F-150, the silver one he'd been driving since spring. Shelby's salon chairs, the new hydraulic ones she'd posted photos of on Facebook with the caption, "Upgrading my space." Vehicle purchase and business equipment. Bought with equity from a house that had equity only because I'd been making $800 mortgage payments every month for 6 years. I sat in the car. The record was in my lap. I did the math the way I do all math. Precise, detached. The same way I'd calculate depreciation on a client's tractor. 6 years. $800 a month. $57,600 in mortgage payments alone. Plus insurance. Plus taxes. Call it $80,000 total. And my father had taken the house those payments protected, walked into a bank, and leveraged it so my sister's husband could buy a truck, and my sister could furnish her salon. $57,600. I'd paid every cent of it, and my father had used it as a down payment on my sister's life. I folded the printout, put it back in my purse, and drove to work. I had a client's payroll to run by 3 o'clock. The numbers in the HELOC could wait. Numbers always wait. They're patient like that. Wade was in the garage when I got home, sanding a cabinet door for a client's kitchen remodel. Sawdust on his forearms, pencil behind his ear, safety glasses pushed up on his forehead. I handed him the printout without a word. He read it, set it on the workbench, pulled off his glasses. "Your dad signed this?" "With Derek." He looked at the paper again like it might say something different the second time. It didn't. "That's the house you've been paying for, and they used it to buy Derek a truck. And Shelby's salon equipment." Wade put both hands flat on the workbench. His knuckles were scarred from a decade of construction, cuts from sheet metal, scrapes from concrete forms, one crooked finger from a framing hammer that slipped in 2019. Those hands had built our porch, our bedroom floor, the mailbox at the end of the driveway. He didn't hit the bench, didn't raise his voice. He stared at the printout and said, "What do you want to do?" I'd thought about it the entire drive home. I could call Roger, confront him, watch him stammer through an excuse about Shelby needing help, about Derek's credit being too low to qualify a loan, about the house being his and him having the right to do what he wanted with it. All true. All beside the point. "Nothing," I said. "I'm not going to do anything." Wade looked at me. "You're not?" "No. The truth will come out. It always does when there's paper. I am a bookkeeper. I believe in documentation. I believe that every transaction leaves a trail, every lie has a ledger, and every secret eventually shows up as a line item someone didn't expect. I didn't need revenge. I needed patience and a filing cabinet. Thanksgiving. Wade and I ate at Loretta's table. Turkey, mashed potatoes, green bean casserole from the recipe she'd clipped from the Greenville Advocate in 1987. Loretta set 3 places. "Put candles on the table," said Grace. It was quiet and warm and exactly what Thanksgiving should be. At my parents' house, 25 minutes away, Shelby was taking photos. I saw them on Facebook that evening while Wade washed dishes and I dried. Group shot around the table. Connie, Roger, Shelby, Derek, Paisley in a high chair with cranberry sauce on her chin. Shelby's caption, "Grateful for family who shows up." She tagged everyone. Connie, Roger, Derek, Paisley. Not me. The church ladies read it. Monday morning, my phone buzzed with a text from Linda Crowell at Curves. "Shelby said you refused to come to Thanksgiving. Your mom cried." I put the phone in my desk drawer and opened a client file. That Tuesday, I stopped at the Dollar General for dish soap and paper towels. Connie was working the register. We hadn't spoken since the phone call about the taxes. She scanned my items without looking up, the way she scanned everyone's items. Beep, beep, beep. Until she reached the last barcode and finally raised her eyes. "Why didn't you come Thursday?" Her voice was small, hurt. The voice of a woman who measures love by attendance. "Why didn't you come October 12th? She didn't answer. She hit the total button. $7.43. I paid in cash. She made change. Our fingers touched when she dropped the coins into my palm, and neither of us acknowledged it. I took my bag and walked out into the parking lot. The fluorescent Dollar General sign buzzed above me. Family, Dollar, General. Everything in that store was cheap, including the silence between my mother and me. December. Tax season was 2 months away, which in an accounting office means the anxiety has already started. Ed and I spent the first week of the month reorganizing client files, updating software, and ordering the industrial-sized box of pens that we went through every year between January and April. Late on a Friday afternoon, Ed leaned back in his chair, took off his bifocals, and said, "How's your family, Autumn?" I told him some of it. Not the HELOC. That was mine. But the wedding, the birthday party, the canceled payments, the silence. He listened the way CPAs listen to clients during a bad year. No interruption, no judgment. Just steady attention to the numbers. When I finished, he put his glasses back on and said, "I've been doing taxes in this county for 35 years. You know what I've learned?" I waited. The people who pay the bills quietly are never the ones who get thanked, but they're always the ones who get blamed when the bills stop. I looked at him. Silver hair, tired eyes, mustard stain on the left lapel. Today's was French's. I could tell by the shade. "Sounds like you're talking about me." "I'm talking about every client who's walked through that door with a problem someone else created." He tapped the folder on his desk, the SBA loan paperwork for the practice sale. "You're going to own this place, Autumn. That's what matters. The other stuff, the family, the house, the sister who talks too much, that'll sort itself out. It always does in a small town." He paused. "Everyone sees everything eventually. That's the curse and the blessing of a place like this." He went back to his files. I went back to mine. Outside, the December light was dying early, the way it does in Ohio, gray and low and honest. Her father used the house she paid over $80,000 to protect, and borrowed against it so her sister could buy salon chairs and her brother-in-law could drive a new truck. And her sister's out there telling the whole town that Autumn abandoned the family. But Autumn's a bookkeeper. She reads numbers. And numbers don't lie. Keep watching. January. The county mailed a tax lien notice to 8847 County Road 12. Amount due, $2,160. Penalty accruing. If unpaid within 90 days, the county could begin proceedings to recover the debt. The HELOC was in trouble too. Carol Fenton told Loretta, who told Wade, who told me, that 2 payments had been missed. The bank had sent a warning letter. If the loan defaulted, foreclosure was on the table. Not the mortgage foreclosure. The HELOC foreclosure. The house that I'd paid for, that Roger had borrowed against, could be seized because Derek Marsh couldn't make payments on a loan he'd co-signed to buy a truck. Roger called me on a Sunday. Not the casual, confused call from October. A different call. A man's voice when the walls are closing in. "Autumn, I need your help. The bank is talking about taking the house." "The house you used as collateral for Derek's truck?" Silence, long enough to count heartbeats if I'd been inclined. "How do you know about that?" "I'm a bookkeeper, Dad. It's on public record at the county recorder's office." "That was..." Shelby needed... He couldn't finish the sentence. I finished it for him. "You paid my mortgage for 6 years. 6 years, Dad. $800 a month. I paid your insurance. I paid your taxes. And you took the house my money was holding up, and put it on the line so Derek could buy a Ford F-150 and Shelby could get salon chairs." I heard his breathing. Shallow. The breathing of a man whose back hurts and whose pride hurts worse. "I'm sorry, Dad. I can't help you with this one." I hung up. It was the first time I'd ever hung up on my father. The phone weighed nothing. Shelby showed up at my house on a Tuesday evening in February. Didn't call first. Didn't text. Just pulled into the driveway in Derek's silver F-150, the $25,000 truck, and knocked on the front door like she owned the place. Wade opened it. She pushed past him without a word. "I need to talk to my sister." I was sitting at the kitchen table with a stack of W-2s and a calculator. I didn't stand up. You're destroying this family, Autumn. I set my pencil down. Shelby, I stopped paying bills that were never mine to begin with. Mom and Dad need you. Mom and Dad needed me on October 12th. They chose cake. Her face went red. Not angry red, the red of someone hearing a truth they've been running from. That's not fair. It was my birthday. And it was my wedding. You don't understand. Her voice changed. Lower, rawer. The salon confidence stripped away. You have everything, Autumn. The job, the husband, the house. All I had was being close to Mom and Dad. That was mine. I could have felt something in that moment. A softer person might have. But I had a question, and I asked it. Did you know Dad used the house to borrow money for you and Derek? The red drained from her face. She went pale the way a spreadsheet goes blank when you delete the wrong formula. Everything that was holding the structure together just vanished. She knew. The answer was written across her face in a font even a non-bookkeeper could read. She'd known about the HELOC. She'd known whose payments built the equity Roger pledged, and she'd taken the money anyway. Get out of my house, Shelby. She left. The F-150's tires crunched on the gravel. I picked up my pencil and went back to the W-2s. Hank Pryor was 68 years old and had lived next door to my parents since before I was born. He came into Henderson and Associates every February to get his taxes done. Simple return, pension plus Social Security, took about 40 minutes. This year, he sat down across from my desk, handed me his documents, and then leaned back in the chair like a man settling in for a longer conversation. I know it's none of my business, he said, but I see things from my porch. Like what, Mr. Pryor? Like who mows your parents' lawn every other Saturday? Like who carries groceries from her car to their kitchen door? Like who showed up at 2 a.m. last January when their pipe burst and water was pouring into the basement? He looked at me over his reading glasses. It wasn't Shelby. I didn't say anything. He wasn't done. Shelby brings casseroles. Shelby brings the baby over. Shelby sits on the porch with Connie and they talk about whatever women talk about on porches. But when the furnace quits, or the gutter falls off, or the property tax bill comes due, Shelby's not the one driving over. He folded his hands on his stomach. Flannel shirt, suspenders. The kind of man Ohio grows like corn. Steady, rooted, no particular hurry. Your daddy sits on that porch and watches you work, Autumn. Every time you come to mow or fix something, he sits in that rocker and watches. I don't think he knows how to say thank you. But he watches. I processed Hank's taxes. Standard deduction. Refund of $412. He signed the forms, shook my hand, and left. But what he'd given me was worth more than what I'd given him. A witness. Someone who'd been watching from 20 feet away for 30 years and knew the difference between showing up and showing off. March. Loretta Barrett threw herself into the reception planning like a general preparing a campaign. She printed 200 invitations on cream-colored cardstock at the library's public printer, 50 cents per page, 40 sheets. She tipped the librarian $5 because that's who Loretta was. Delayed reception, celebrating the marriage of Autumn and Wade Barrett. VFW Post 7262. Saturday, April 12th, 5 p.m. Potluck. She mailed them to everyone. Church members, Henderson clients, the guys Wade worked with on job sites, Dollar General employees, Tractor Supply crew. The woman who ran the consignment shop in Greenville where I'd bought my dress. 200 invitations to 200 households in a county where news traveled faster than the mail. She did not send one to Roger and Connie. I'd asked her not to. You sure? Loretta said. I'm sure. They'll hear about it anyway. Whole county will. I know. I bought a new dress, not the original $62 consignment dress. That one was hanging in my closet with a memory attached to it that I didn't want to wear again. This one was from the same shop. $89. White, simple, with a lace hem that hit just below the knee. I tried it on in the dressing room and looked in the mirror. This was the dress my parents would see me in for the first time. If they came. Wade spent 3 weekends at the VFW hall. He sanded the floor, patched the drywall where someone had put a fist through it during a Knights of Columbus fundraiser, and repainted the trim. Barrett Construction donated the lumber. His 2 guys helped on their day off. By the first week of April, the hall looked better than it had in years. 200 chairs, not one of them reserved. Connie called on a Wednesday evening. I was washing dishes. Wade was watching a Reds game in the living room with the volume low. My phone vibrated on the counter, and I saw Mom on the screen and almost let it go to voicemail. Almost. Autumn, I heard about the reception. From who? Everyone. The whole town's talking about it. Silence. The kitchen faucet dripped. The new one Wade installed, which still had a slight leak we hadn't gotten around to fixing. Can I come? I turned off the water, dried my hands on the dish towel, leaned against the counter. You chose Shelby's birthday over my wedding, Mom. I know I did. Why? She started crying. Not the loud theatrical kind that Shelby could produce at the drop of a hat. Quiet crying. The kind that leaks out of someone who's been holding it too long. Because I was scared you were leaving. And Shelby was right there. I closed my eyes. My mother lost her mother at 16 on a 2-lane road in November. She'd spent 43 years building a fortress against the fear of people disappearing. Shelby was inside the fortress. I was on the other side of the wall, knocking with a checkbook in my hand, and Connie couldn't hear me over her own fear. You're not invited, Mom. But you're not banned either. The VFW is a public building. What does that mean? It means, if you show up knowing what you chose, and so will everyone else in that room. She was quiet for a long time. I heard Roger's TV in the background, some game show, a buzzer, applause from strangers. Okay, she said. Okay. I hung up and finished the dishes. The faucet dripped. I made a mental note to buy a new washer. Shelby called 4 days later. I recognized the ring pattern by now. 2 short buzzes, then nothing, then 3 more. Because she always called and hung up and called again, like she needed a running start. I picked up on the second attempt. Her voice was different. Not the sharp salon voice she used when she was selling highlights or selling lies about me around town. Flat. Tired. The voice under the voice. I know you hate me. I don't hate you, Shelby. You should. Pause. I knew about the loan. I knew Dad was using the house, and I let him because... Her voice cracked. Not a dramatic crack, a structural one. Because I needed something to work. Just one thing. The salon, the truck, something. After Lily. Lily. Shelby's second daughter. 32 weeks along. Born still, in a hospital room 40 minutes from here, 2 years ago. I'd driven there that night. Sat in the hallway. Brought a blanket I'd bought at the consignment shop in Greenville. Pink, soft, sized for a newborn who never came home. Shelby never acknowledged the blanket, but the nurses told me she held it. You don't know what it's like to lose everything on a day that was supposed to be happy. I stood in my kitchen and listened to my sister grieve. I did know. I knew what it was like to stand in a white dress on a day that was supposed to be the happiest of my life and look at 2 empty chairs. I knew exactly what it felt like to lose something on a day that was supposed to be about joy. I'm sorry about Lily, Shelby. I always have been. But that doesn't give you the right to erase me. She hung up. I set the phone down. The house was quiet. Wade was at a job site. The clock on the stove read 4:17 p.m. The night before the reception, I sat at the kitchen table with everything spread out in front of me. 6 years of bank statements, the autopay records, the canceled checks for insurance premiums, the property tax receipts, the HELOC printout from the county recorder's office with Roger Wells and Derek Marsh typed in black ink on the cosigner line. I looked at all of it. Then I put it in a folder, put the folder in my desk drawer, and closed the drawer. I wasn't bringing any of it to the VFW. A bookkeeper knows the difference between evidence and testimony. Evidence sits in a file. Testimony walks through the door and speaks. Carol Fenton would be at the reception. Loretta had invited her. Hank Pryor was coming. He'd told me so when he picked up his tax return. Ed Henderson and his wife would be there. Doug from Rite Aid. Half the county. These people didn't need my bank statements. They'd been watching for years. Each of them held a piece of the truth. A payment processed, a prescription picked up, a lawn mowed at dawn. And Shelby's 6 months of lies had been pressing down on those pieces like a thumb on a scale. I tried on the dress one more time. Stood in front of the bathroom mirror. White lace at the hem. Lavender pinned in my hair, the way Loretta had done it at the church. I looked like a bride. 6 months late, but a bride. Wade came in from the garage, sawdust still on his boots. He leaned in the doorway and looked at me. "You ready?" I smoothed the dress. "I've been ready for 6 months." He nodded. No speech, no pep talk. Just a nod from a man who builds things and knows when the foundation is solid. VFW Post 7262, 5 o'clock on a Saturday in April. The potluck tables ran 30 feet along the back wall. Casseroles, fried chicken, deviled eggs, 3 kinds of pie, and a sheet cake from Sullivan's Bakery that said Wade and Autumn in blue frosting. Red, white, and blue bunting hung from the ceiling because the VFW had it permanently installed, and nobody was going to take it down for a wedding reception. Country music played from the borrowed speakers Wade had wired to the corner posts. By 5:15, 180 people were inside. Ed Henderson arrived with his wife Martha and immediately stationed himself near the pie table. Doug the pharmacist came in his good khakis. Hank Pryor wore a button-down shirt I'd never seen him in. Plaid, ironed, collar buttoned all the way up. Carol Fenton sat near the door with her husband. Loretta stood by the entrance greeting people like she was running for office. I walked in at 5:20 in the white dress. $89. Lace hem. Lavender in my hair. Wade was beside me in his blue suit. The same one he'd borrowed for the church, which his friend said he could keep because it fit Wade better anyway. The room turned. People clapped. Someone whistled. Ed raised a plastic cup of punch and said something I couldn't hear over the noise. For 30 minutes, it was everything a reception should be. I shook hands. I hugged people I hadn't seen since high school. I ate a deviled egg and told Carolyn Fisher her potato salad was the best in the county, and I meant it. Wade danced with Loretta to a Patsy Cline song. I watched them and felt my chest open up like a window. Then, at 5:30, the front door of the VFW swung open. Roger, Connie, Shelby, Derek, and Paisley walked in. 180 pairs of eyes shifted toward the door. The room didn't go silent all at once. It went quiet in patches, like a field where the crickets stop section by section when something walks through the grass. Roger was wearing his best flannel shirt, the green one Connie ironed for funerals and church picnics. Connie wore a floral dress I recognized from the Dollar General break room. She'd worn it to the employee Christmas party last year. Shelby had put on makeup. Derek held Paisley, who was wearing a pink dress with a bow that was bigger than her head. They stood in the doorway and scanned the room until they found me. Connie saw the dress first. She saw me in white, for the first time, 6 months after my wedding, standing next to the husband she'd never watched me marry. Her hand went to her mouth. The sound she made was small, a gasp that didn't quite become a word. I didn't walk toward them. I stayed where I was, next to Wade, next to Loretta, next to the people who had shown up. Roger approached. His face was tight. His eyes were red around the edges, not crying, but the redness of a man who hadn't slept and didn't expect to. "Autumn, we need to talk." "Not now, Dad. This is a party." "The bank. They're going to take the house." He said it loud enough, not shouting, just the volume of a man whose hearing was going and whose pride had already gone. 180 people heard him. Loretta Barrett looked at Roger Wells with an expression I'd seen her wear exactly once before. At her husband's funeral, when someone told her he should have gone to the doctor sooner, pity and disgust braided together. Shelby stepped around Roger. Her heels clicked on the VFW floor. She'd worn the tall ones, the ones she wore to the salon when she wanted to look like the boss and not the only employee. Her face was flushed. Her jaw was set. She pointed at me. "This is what you do, Autumn. Throw a party while Mom and Dad are about to lose their house?" The room went dead. Not quiet. Dead. 180 people holding forks and napkins and plastic cups of sweet tea, frozen mid-bite. "You cut them off! You married some contractor and forgot where you came from." Hank Pryor set his plate of pie on the nearest table. Slowly. The way a man puts something down when he needs both hands free. "Now hold on a minute." Shelby spun toward him. "This is family business." "Family business?" Hank's voice was level. 30 years of living next to the Wells family, and he hadn't raised his voice once in all that time. He didn't start now. "I've been living next door to your parents for 30 years. I've seen who mows their lawn, who carries groceries up those porch steps, who paid the plumber at 2 a.m. in January when that basement pipe burst." He looked at Shelby. "It wasn't you." Carol Fenton stood up from her table near the door. "And I can tell you who's been paying their mortgage for 6 years, because I processed the payments at the bank." Doug from Rite Aid, standing near the punch bowl, cleared his throat. "I can tell you who picks up Roger's prescriptions every month, and who pays the difference when the insurance lapses and the price goes to full retail. One by one. 3 people. 3 pieces." The puzzle Shelby had spent 6 months scrambling was assembling itself in front of 180 witnesses. Ed Henderson rose from his chair by the pie table. Martha put her hand on his arm, and he patted it gently before stepping forward. He wasn't a man who liked scenes. He liked columns of numbers and clean ledgers, and the quiet satisfaction of a balanced return. But he'd also been my boss for 9 years, and that counted for something. "Autumn Wells has been the most reliable, most ethical professional I've worked with in 35 years, he said. Not loudly. Ed never spoke loudly. He didn't need to. "She doesn't talk about what she does for her family. She just does it." Carol Fenton was still standing. She looked at Shelby, then at Roger, then back at the room. "I'd like to add something. There's a home equity line of credit on that property. $25,000, co-signed by Roger Wells and Derek Marsh, filed for vehicle purchase and business equipment." The silence changed texture. Harder. Derek took a half step backward. His hand tightened on Paisley's leg. Shelby's mouth opened. Dad said it was..." Connie turned to Roger. The floral dress. The Dollar General Christmas party dress. Her face was white. "You borrowed against the house?" Roger looked at the floor. The floor of a VFW hall in a town where he'd lived his entire life, where every person in the room knew his name, and where his secret was now lying on the ground in front of him like a dropped plate. I spoke. Calm. Level. The voice I use when I'm reading a balance sheet to a client who doesn't want to hear what the numbers say. "Mom, I paid your mortgage for 6 years. $800 a month. Dad asked me to, and I did. I also paid the health insurance and the property taxes. You didn't know because Dad didn't want you to." Connie looked at Roger. "Is that true?" Roger nodded. "Once." I turned to my mother. "And on October 12th, when I stood in a church in a white dress waiting for you, you told me..." I paused. The room held its breath. "We couldn't miss her party." Shelby tried one more time. She stood up from the chair she'd collapsed into, mascara tracking down both cheeks, and threw her hand toward me. "She's making herself the victim. She always does this." Loretta Barrett didn't move from her spot beside me. She just turned her head and looked at Shelby with the same steady gaze she'd given me in the church hallway 6 months ago. "Honey, the woman in the white dress paid for the roof over your head. She didn't even get a thank you. She got 2 empty chairs at her wedding." Shelby sat back down. Derek pulled Paisley closer and stared at the table. Roger took a step toward me. His bad back made the movement slow, careful, the walk of a man who hurt all the time and had just found a new place to hurt. I was ashamed. I couldn't face Dad. I looked at my father, 61 years old, flannel shirt ironed by a wife who didn't know their daughter had been carrying them both. Hands that used to stamp brake rotors 10 hours a day. You told me I didn't need you, that I had Wade. You don't need us. You've got Wade now. Do you remember saying that? His jaw worked. I remember. I needed you to walk me down the aisle. Instead, Loretta did it. And she didn't have to. She chose to. My voice didn't rise. It didn't crack. I spoke the way I speak when I'm reading a client through a hard year. Clear, factual, without decoration. I didn't stop helping because I stopped caring. I stopped helping because you taught me that caring didn't count. Shelby stood one last time. Her chair scraped the floor. Her whole body shook. You always had everything and I had nothing. Then she broke. She sat down hard, covered her face with both hands, and sobbed in front of 180 people who now knew exactly who had everything and who had nothing. I turned to the room. Not to my family. To the people who'd come tonight with casseroles and pie and church clothes and the simple expectation of a party. Thank you all for being here. This was supposed to be a celebration, and it still is. I took Wade's hand. His grip was warm, calloused, steady. The hand of a man who builds things that don't fall down. 6 months ago, I married this man in a church with 2 empty chairs in the front row. Tonight, every chair in this room is full. And that's enough. The applause started slowly. Ed Henderson, clapping his big accountant's hands together near the pie table. Then Loretta. Then Hank Pryor. Then it spread the way warmth spreads from a stove in a small room until 180 people were on their feet and the bunting trembled overhead. Loretta walked to the borrowed speakers and turned the music back on. George Jones. He stopped loving her today. Not the most cheerful pick, but nobody argued with Loretta Barrett's music choices. The potluck line reopened. People filled their plates. Conversations resumed. Quietly at first, then at normal volume. The way a town decides collectively that the hard part is over and the casserole is getting cold. Wade pulled me onto the floor. We danced. Our first dance in front of anyone. The one we should have had 6 months ago, in this same hall, with the same bunting, but with 2 chairs that weren't empty. His hand was on the small of my back. My forehead was against his shoulder. The song changed to something slower. We kept moving. Roger and Connie sat at a table near the wall. Shelby had taken Paisley to the bathroom. Derek sat alone, staring at his hands. The reception went on without them. Parties tend to do that. Roger and Connie left the VFW at 7:15. Quietly. Through the side door, past the kitchen, out into the parking lot where the April air smelled like rain and freshly turned fields. Shelby left first, carrying Paisley asleep against her shoulder, face swollen, Derek trailing behind with his truck keys already in his hand. A week later, Roger called. Not the panicked call about the bank, not the angry call about the payments. A different kind of call. The kind where a man speaks slowly because he's choosing each word like he's stepping across a creek on loose stones. I applied to refinance the HELOC. By myself. Without Derek. Good. I talked to the disability office about increasing my hours. Odd jobs. I can do light carpentry if I wear the brace. Okay. And I'm sorry. I should have been at that church. I didn't say it was okay. It wasn't okay. It might never be okay. I know, Dad. Connie wrote a letter. 3 pages, front and back, in the careful cursive she'd learned at the same county school I'd attended 20 years later. I read it once, sitting at my desk after hours with Ed's mustard-stained nameplate catching the last of the daylight. Then I folded it, put it in my desk drawer next to the HELOC printout, and closed the drawer. Some things need time before you read them again. Shelby didn't call, didn't text, didn't post anything on Facebook about family or gratitude or showing up. The silence was strange, louder in some ways than the lies had been, but it was honest silence, and that was better than what came before. Ed Henderson approved my SBA loan in May. I signed the paperwork on a Tuesday. Henderson and Associates became Wells Tax and Bookkeeping. The new sign went up on Main Street the same week. Ed stood on the sidewalk and took a photo with his flip phone. "Looks right," he said. I didn't resume the mortgage payments. Roger handled it. Disability check, odd jobs, the brace on his back, and a stubbornness that, for once, was pointed in a useful direction. Barely. But he handled it. I did start picking up his prescriptions again. Not because he asked, because I'm a bookkeeper. And a 61-year-old man with a herniated disc who isn't taking his gabapentin is a number that doesn't add up. Doug at Rite Aid didn't comment when I walked in that first time. He just filled the bag and nodded. Sunday dinners started at our house. Loretta came every week. Roger and Connie came twice a month. Awkward at first. Quiet. The kind of dinners where the sound of forks on plates does most of the talking. Shelby came once, with Paisley. Sat at the far end of the table. Didn't say much. Passed the salt when asked. Loretta carved the roast. Wade poured the tea. I sat at the head of a table I'd paid for, in a house I'd earned, with people who were learning, slowly, imperfectly, what it looked like when the person they'd ignored set the terms. The chairs at that table were never empty again. The people who ignore your sacrifices don't get to define your worth. But you get to decide how long you keep sacrificing in silence. 2 empty chairs, $57,000, a loan document she was never supposed to find, and 1 dance at a VFW hall that was 6 months overdue. If this story reminded you that the person who pays the bills in silence isn't the person who should carry the blame, share it with someone who needs to hear that. And if you've ever stopped carrying weight for people who never noticed you were lifting, tell me about it in the comments. Subscribe to Hidden Family Revenge for more stories like this one.